Welcome friends to the 10th lecture of our course B2B marketing. So, in the last lecture we had discussed about the SAIT's model of industrial buying behavior, and we discussed about the various factors involved in the decision making process, right. So, how organizations take decision, whether it is a joint decision or an individual decision, and what factors affect it, for example like the expectations of the various people involved in it, and what kind of timely pressures are there, or urgencies are there, and how information gets distorted and what is the effect of those distortions on the buying process. So, we had discussed those things, and today we will continue with one more model, which is the Webster and Wind's model, and then followed by a typical purchasing process, right, in the organizations. So, I welcome you again to the class. So, let us begin with this Webster and Wind's model of organizational buying behavior. Now, this model was published in a article in the Journal of Marketing, so in 1972, and here the author has talked about certain variables, 4 variables largely, right, and this 4 sets of variables are the environmental, organizational, buying center and individuals, right. So, these 4 variables factors, or you can say the 4 headings of variables, they influence the entire decision making process, right, whether the organization would buy or not buy, whether what kind of purchase they will make, all these things. So, when it talks about environmental variables, it largely talks about the physical, technological, economic, political, legal and cultural issues, right. So, physical, again I would say, like for example the geographical climate of a place, the distance from the port, the availability of raw materials like ores and all. So, these are some of the environmental variables the author has categorized, and these also influence the organizational variables, like for example what kind of a technology the organization is using. For example, so all organizations are not exactly using the same level of technology, right. So, maybe some are very much dependent on technology and some are very less dependent or moderately dependent. So, if organizations are very largely dependent on technology and they have completely automized their processes, so that is a different kind of organization, right. And what kind of a buying center do they have? What kind of a buying center means the structure of the organization, like the buying committee, you can say understand as the buying committee. So, who are the members of the buying committee, what they are doing. In fact, today we will be discussing about the buying center also. And then what are the objectives and goals of these people involved, or the organization. What is the organization's goal and objective? For example, the goals can change, right, with time. With for example, organizations are getting more concerned about nowadays about the environment and ecological factors, and their objectives are they are molding their objectives accordingly, right. And finally, who are the people involved, right, and what is their responsibility, what is their role. So, Webster and Wind have said that these 4 are comprised in the are a part of the organizational variables. Then it talks about the buying center variables, which are, for example, it talks about the interpersonal interaction. Now what kind of a interaction is happening, right, and what is the group functioning, right, buying task and non-task dimensions. Like for example, it talks about what kind of are these members within the organizations, are they cooperating, are they a support of each other, or they are having a regular conflict. In the last class I had talked about conflict and how to resolve conflict. Now, how do these conflicts happen? Now, for example, if the union is not supporting the organization or is against the organization. Now, there are several examples, classical examples, where unions have been responsible for the downfall of the organization, right, and even several members within the organizations, they do not cooperate to each other, and that leads to the failure of an organization. Okay. And finally, the individual variables, for example, the needs and desires and the kind of perceptions that these members of the organization have. Now, all these taken together, so the environmental variables, organizational variables, buying center variables and the individual variables. Now, that would affect the entire buying process, right, the entire buying decision process. So, this is what the Webster and Wind model said, and it is very close, if you see, if it is very closely related to the Howard-Set model, except that the Howard-Set model talks about little more about some exogenous variables like the situational factors, and it talks about the kind of information search and sources. Otherwise, if you look, it is more or less, it has a very lot of resemblance to the Howard-Set model, okay, sorry, the States model, because Howard-Set model is a consumer buying behavior model, and we are talking about the industrial buying behavior model, so which is the States model largely, okay. Now, today we will also talk about the stages in the organizational buying process. Now, what are the different stages for in the organizational buying process? So, let us see. So, the first stage in any organizational buying process, it starts with the problem identification. See, it is very interesting to know that problem identification looks like a very simple word, it is a simple term, right, but actually it is a very difficult, it is a very complex thing. Now, for example, let us say, just imagine, let us say there is a very large shop floor, right, or a place where the manufacturing is happening. The productivity is somehow has been constantly falling because we do not know why it is happening. So, the organization might think, okay, because the people are not interested or they are not motivated, so that is why the the performance is decreasing, could be, right, or our machineries which we are using are not state of the art machineries, so that is why the performance is decreasing. So, it is a kind of a real example I am telling you. So, this had happened with one company, and the organization started identifying that why is the performance of the workers in the shop floor decreasing with time, right. So, they tried to survey, they tried to talk to people, find out what is the reason, and but they were not getting any answer to their question. So, what they did was they hired a consultant and they gave this problem. So, they said our people are somehow not able to concentrate, motivate, they are not motivated. So, we do not know how to deal with this problem. So, after some time the consultant looked at the place, spoke to the workers and everything, and they interestingly they identified a problem. Now, the problem was such a problem that the company did not somehow pay attention to earlier. Now, the problem was that there was a very poor ventilation process in the shop floor, right. So, why? Because the most of the chimneys and through which the ventilation was happening had got clogged, and this was not the somehow the company had just somehow it had gone out of the mind. So, they could not connect this earlier, but when the consultant asked them to reframe that change it or clean it and all. So, when they did it, automatically it affected the behavior of the workers in the shop floor, and that helped him in improving their productivity and their work ethics. Okay. Now, why I am saying this is only one of a example. You can have innumerable examples where the organization might not understand even what is the exact problem, right. We many a times we can understand we look at the symptoms, right. My symptom, for example, my sales is going down. The symptom is, for example, the workers are not enough motivated. The symptoms are, for example, there is a loss in revenue. But what is the cause? What is the problem? Why is this happening? So, that is very difficult to identify. So, the first step is to problem identification. Now, the second step, once you have identified the problem, is the general description of needs. Now, what do you need and how much do you need, how do you need, when do you need, all these things will be a part of the general description of need, right. So, the organization may the different agents involved in the purchasing process, they might give a general description of the entire needs that the organization has. So, what product specifications do you need? For example, let us say in the third step, the organization, if it wants certain products, for example, Now, what exactly do you want? Now, see, interestingly, in the B2B firms, right, one product may have multiple utilities, one product may have multiple designs. Okay. Now, that can happen because of the kind of output you desire. Now, let us say I need a machine which can rotate, let us say maybe which can make 1000 rotations per hour, let us say, but and the output would be, let us say, it can produce 100 units. And on the other hand, I am an small organization who does not need a machine which can rotate 1000, make 1000 rotations per hour. Rather, I need something because my output that I desire is maybe less, something around 40 to 50 output per hour. So, I think any machine around 300 rotations would be good enough for me. Now, so the same machinery now will have a different kind of specification according to the need of the buyer, right. So, this is a very interesting behavior in the organizational buying processes. So, you can customize and you can demand whatever is your exact requirement. Okay. The fourth step is, once you have identified and you have noted the product specifications, the fourth point is to go for a supplier search, right. So, now you will look for different vendors, different suppliers who can help you in managing or getting your job done, right. The fifth step is, once you have done the supplier search, you go for a acquisition and analysis of the proposal, because what you do is you go for a request for proposal, RFP we say, request for quotation or request for proposal, where the suppliers will be offering us different proposals of their own, right. And once we acquire the proposals from the suppliers, then the next step is we, on certain basis, right, certain after making certain calculations. So, we will finally select one particular vendor or supplier. Okay. Now, this supplier selection, I think how it is done, I have this as a part of this unit, right, which I will be explaining. The next thing that the supplier selection is done is the selection of the order routine. Now, how do you want to place your order, right. So, that is the seventh step. So, and the last step is to review the performance. Now, so once you have done the selection of the order and you have placed the order, then you need to look at the performance review. Now, how they are performing, and you need a continuous check, a monitoring and continuous improvement. So, this cycle goes on and on and on. So, this is how, these are different stages in the organizational buying process, and every organization has to pass through these steps. Okay. So, now after the Webster and Wind's model, now we will be talking about the buying center. Now, what is the buying center? So, as you can understand, you must have understood by now, a buying center is a is a team of people, right. All those members in an organization who become involved in the buying process, right. And the buying center can differ always from organization to organization, and maybe the size of the organization also. For example, if you see, there are 6 members in the buying organization or the buying center, right. In the buying center there are 6 members as the model shows you, but not necessarily that all the 6 members might be existing or actively involved in a small organization. So, this may be possible in a large organization, but in a small organization it might only one man can be behaving, or 2% can be people can be behaving and doing the role of all the different members. So, who are these members of the buying center, and what do they do exactly? Let us look at their profile. So, if you can see, the first one we start with is an initiator, right. So, as the name suggests, initiator is anybody who perceives a problem and initiates the buying process to solve it, right. So, as I have given the example of the R&D team of Tata Limited realized that they need a new ERP system to maintain their employee details. So, here the initiator is the R&D team, right. Sometimes the initiator can be the users or the manufacturing department, and it has been largely seen that most of the time the users are the initiators, because they feel that there is a need of a specific service, and they accordingly ask for the same to the management. So, the management then takes a decision whether to buy it or not, and when to buy it or not, and all these things. So, once the initiator is there, then there is somebody called an influencer. Now, who is this influencer? Influencer is basically one who affects the purchase decision by providing technical information or other relevant internal or external information. Now, can the influencer be, for example, in our case, can the HR manager of Tata Limited or Tata Steel or anything, can he influence the process of purchase? So, what we are saying is the HR manager of Tata Limited should support the insights of the R&D. So, HR can be an influencer in the new ERP purchase, right? Okay, good. So, who is the third person in the line? Now, the third one is the decider. So, who is the decider? The decider is the one, as you can understand from the name itself, right. So, he will be the one who will make the final call, right, take the final call. So, he is the person who makes the buying decision, right, whether he is the signatory or he is the one who signs basically. So, whether or not they have formal authority to do so, he could be the owner and engineer or even the certain other buyers, right, or even the head of finance, right. So, he can be the decider. So, in this case maybe the CEO of Tata Limited is the one who should approve this purchase as it involves a huge investment. So, he is the decider in the ERP purchase. Okay. The next is the gatekeeper. So, you have a set of people in the B2B organizations who are called gatekeepers. Now, why the gatekeeper? Now, their role is to work like a gatekeeper who controls the flow of information. So, the gatekeeper basically controls the information to be reviewed by the members of the buying group. Now, for example, the buyer may screen advertising material and even the opinion of the sales people, and all this information is provided to this other members of the buying center by the gatekeeper, who can be the secretary in the organization or a person from the systems department who has lot of information and who knows which information is needed and where it is available. So, for example, in this our case, the tenders for the new ERP is managed through website. So, the website team can be the gatekeeper in the ERP purchase. Okay. Finally, you have the buyer who has the formal authority to select and purchase products or services, and the responsibility to implement and follow the procurement process. So, the buyer is basically the one who we have been talking about when we talked about the Harvard's the SATE model and the Webster model, right. So, the purchasing department. So, there is always in any organization, especially the large organizations, you have a team of people who are responsible for the purchase, right, any purchase, right. Now, these members of the purchasing team, they are responsible for information search, vendor selection process, everything, right. So, these people, the purchase department people of Tata Limited is the one who is responsible to purchase. So, these are the buyers, okay. And then finally, you have somebody who is called the user, right. So, who is this user? The one who is actually using the product in question. Now, who is using the product in question? He can be a person who is working in the shop floor, or he is just a normal employee who is using this product. Now, here in this case, the employees of Tata Limited are the real users of a new ERP installed in the company, right. So, as you can see, so in any organization, if it is large, and especially B2B firms are generally large in size, they can be small and medium also, but medium also if we say it's large from our from a layman's perspective, right. So, when you have such a large number of people working for you and their the purchases are huge in size and all. So, in such condition, it is very important for organizations to create this buying center and selectively keep people, so that these people are rational in their thought process, they take good decisions, and finally, these decisions have a impact on the company's growth and profitability. Okay. Now, once we have done with the buying center, we have understood the members of the buying center, their role and responsibilities, right. The next thing is the purchasing function. Okay. So, what is the purchasing function, right. So, generally when we talk about purchasing function, we talk about three types of purchasing function in an organization. Some purchasing are for those kind of items or products which are completely new and the organization has no clue about it, right, or very little idea about it. Now, when can it happen? Let us say recently Hindustan Zinc, right? Hindustan Zinc Limited, a very popular company, the founder is Anil Agarwal. So, very large company, a very profit making company and hugely dividend paying company. Now, has forayed into Zinc Limited, Hindustan Zinc Limited fertilizers. So, recently it is only yesterday's news, or it is a news just 1 or 2 days back. So, they are now foraying into fertilizers. So, they will be starting a plant in Rajasthan, somewhere in Rajasthan, and they they are getting into fertilizers. Now, this company is completely venturing into a new area, right. So, new area, so the kind of machinery they have to purchase, the kind of knowledge they want for fertilizer unit is different from what they were doing, because they are basically a mining company, right. So, mining and processing company. So, but fertilizer is a new area completely. So, they want to phosphate based fertilizers they want to produce. Now, that is something new to them, right. So, when they are doing a new job, so here the company would be involved in a new task, that means, right. So, new kind of machinery, new kind of skill, new kind of processes, everything is new, right. But there could be a situation when a company is not doing entirely a new thing, but it is maybe doing a slight redesign or slight change in the product or processes, or even trying to upgrade its product, right. So, when they are in a situation where they have to upgrade its product or move to the next level in the ladder, so they feel that the existing product is somehow not capable of delivering the results what they want, right. So, they want to modify their existing products and services. So, in such a condition they would like to go for a different kind of product, slightly different kind of product, and maybe the existing suppliers or vendors might not be able to help them or support them in their needs. So, in this case we say the purchasing function is mostly involved in a modified, right, revised or modified rebuy. The third is a routine task. So, it is a routine task where you are just repeatedly same Hindustan Zinc Limited, let us say whatever machineries they are buying for their mining work, right. So, whatever they are buying, if they want to again buy the same thing, right, because the mining activity is not very innovative or nothing is changing, right. So, it is like a commodity. So, the same kind of machinery they want to buy again and again. So, here this is a case of a straight rebuy, no changes. So, same mostly the same supplier, until unless the supplier has increases his price or something. So, that is a separate story, otherwise it is just a straight rebuy. So, new task purchase, as it says, is a purchase that is made for the first time, and this can be the most complicated purchase. As I said, now Hindustan Zinc does not have any idea about fertilizers. So, it could be anything from a special item that a customer has requested and a store does not carry, or store here means the company does not carry, to complex manufacturing equipments, right, to be used for the automate production, right. Similarly, in a modified, I just said the buyer has experience buying the goods or services, but some aspect of the purchasing has changed now. So, as the product specification has changed, or the terms and conditions have changed, or the company wants to go to a new kind of, slightly new kind of design, not a completely new design, but a slightly improvement in the design, and the existing supplier may be in a position to supply it or may not be in a position to supply it. So, in that case we go for a modified rebuy. Now, we are upgrading your office software, for example. So, that is a case where you go for a modified rebuy. The third is a straight rebuy, which I explained, it is a routine order, right, and the services purchased from the same vendor as in the past. So, staple goods such as office supplies fall into the category of this straight rebuy, right. Okay. So, now we have understood the buying center, we have understood the kind of purchasing being done in our organizations. Now, this is something called a Buygrid framework, where you try to see in terms of the organization's need, how do you explain the new task or the modified buy and straight rebuy. Now, if you look at this Buygrid framework, so if you look at the anticipation or recognition of a problem, and the next thing that we would like to discuss in the as per the SATS model is the conflict resolution. Now, as we have already discussed, right, that if there are people in an organization and it is a large organization, there is bound to be some or the other conflict. So, the author in this Dr. Jagdish Seth, he says that conflict resolution is a very important thing that organizations need to understand, right. Now, conflict resolution can be on basis of a rational approach or a non-rational approach, right. Now, when I am saying rational, what do I mean? When there is a problem solving approach. So, when the disagreement is due to differences in the expectation and more, so what happens is people go for more information search, right. So, in that condition, it is a healthy argument or a healthy debate between the members of the organization, right. In the second case, where you need to if the conflict happens among the parties due to a disagreement on some specific criteria, let us say, which is the specific criteria could be price or certain type of design or something, right. There in such a condition, the organizations need to evaluate the suppliers, right. Certain, they might try to search for some more suppliers who can fulfill their requirement. Although there is an agreement on the buying goals or objectives at a more fundamental level, right, that means they are not in disagreement, they are agreeing on the fundamental aspect that if we are using this kind of a product or this kind of a service, our profitability or our there will be a growth in our revenue. But the problem is to the specific criteria, right, that maybe the design that we want is not happening, or the kind of the strength of the material that we require, they are not supplying. So, that is what is a very still a healthy discussion for any organization. But sometimes conflicts can happen which are not rational, but in real life you can't always expect things to be rational. Now, what is this? Let us say this is especially true with respect to unique or new buying decisions. When you are trying to make some new buying decisions and there is a capital expenditure case coming up. So, the conflict is resolved not only by changing the differences, right, in relative importance of the buying goals or objectives of the individual, but by the process of bargaining. Now, what happens here? They agree that yes, this is something like which is required or something. So, what they would do is they would try to bargain among themselves, right, and in the bargaining they would try to keep one team happy by giving him certain offer. For example, let us say why this is important. Now, the finance team let us say is concerned about price, the manufacturing department is concerned about, let us say, the usability, right. So, the finance team would bargain, let us say, with the manufacturing team and say, because you see this time we are short of revenue or money, so let us go for this machine and deal with it for another 2-3 years. And after that, we promise you that in the next phase, when we have sufficient finance, we will get you those machineries that you are asking for. So, now this is kind of a bargaining that will happen between the departments, with the functional areas of the department, right. And the last one is a very completely irrational thing. Even bargaining sometimes is not good. So, that is why I have kept it in the not rational category. The last one is a completely not rational thing, right. What happens here? Now, the differences arise not only due to the objectives, but also due to the style of the decision making. Now, let us say there are people in the organization, let us say within the same team there are two people and they dislike each other, right, and one is going against the other for the simple reason that let us say A wants a particular kind of product or service, B knows it is good, but B still resists it because he does not want A's point to be successful or A to be successful. So, this is completely a case of politicking, or you have to handle it, this is like a backstabbing. So, author has used the word backstabbing also, and it is very difficult to handle this, but this is sometimes the reality of life. So, whenever you talk about industrial purchases, right, such kind of conflicts will arise because of the large number of members involved, and you need to understand how to resolve these problems, right. The last and final factor that we are talking about is situational factors. So, when we are talking about situational factors, we include temporary economic conditions such as price control, recession, taxes, internal strikes, walkouts, breakdown of machines, all these different kind of situational factors that also can affect on the entire buying approach of the company, right. So, this is all this is how I have explained you the buying organizational buying behavior with the help of the SATS model, right, of industrial buying behavior. Now, in the next section we will also see some other model, right, but I think I will wind up this lecture here. So, I hope you are clear with what I have explained and why organizational buying behavior is so important, and these factors why they need to be looked at it more specifically, because if we do not do it, then there can be so many issues that can occur and that can eventually affect the profitability and the growth of a firm, right. So, now after understanding the stages in the organizational buying process, and we have also talked about the purchasing, the functions, the how, what are the different purchasing functions. Now, let us try to understand both of them taking together in a single matrix, right. So, if you look at it, so this side you have the stages in the organizational buying process, right. So, these are the 8 steps, and here we have 3 different type of tasks. So, it is a new task or a modified buy or a straight rebuy. Now, what is now this taken this when these two things are taken together, it is known as a Buygrid framework, and the Buygrid framework is nothing but a generic conceptual model for the buying process of organizations. Now, organizations will have to look at every point, like each point, for example, the anticipation or recognition of a problem and what happens in a new task or in case of a modified buy or a straight rebuy, right. So, if you look at this whole holistic this model taken together, all these things, you can see that recognition of a problem is obviously required in case of a new task, but in case of a modified buy it may be, might not be, and but it is not required in case of a straight rebuy because it is a routine task. Okay. Similarly, the quantity of the needed item. So, to determine how much is needed, that is also required. In fact, if you look at the new task, all the different elements that you are a part of the organizational buying process are required, are a necessity, right, for the new task. But when you go for a modified buy, there only maybe the characteristics of the product or the specifications of the product might be modified or might change. So, that is why in case of a modified buy, this is maybe yes, this is surely yes, and performance feedback is obviously this has to be taken in all the 3 steps, but other things it could be a maybe situation or may not be situation, you may need it, you may not need it. If you look at the straight rebuy, all of the things are more or less the same, remaining the same. So, only thing that may change is the description of the characteristics and the quantity of needed item, that is obviously required because you have to place a order. So, how many units of the order you are requiring, although it is a similar product or a routine product, but how many you require and when do you require. So, these things is a must. So, this is in case of a straight rebuy also you have to have that. But if you look at the other all points, they are a no for a straight rebuy case. So, understanding or placing them together is in one model is known as the Buygrid framework, right. So, we have done all these things now, and let us come to a task for you. Now, please take it as a task and try to explain the buying center for an organization, either where you are if you are a student where you are studying, or if you are working in an organization, then the same organization where you are working, try to explain the buying center in terms of your organization. So, let us say you are into a university, you are studying, so there must be some purchases being done in your university. So, who are the members, important people who are involved in the purchase function, and what is their role, how do you see the gatekeeper, the influencer, the decider, the buyer and everyone, right, in this buying center of your organization that you are linked to, or you are associated with, and try to see it from a very practical point of view. So, it will also tell you one thing, that not only understanding the members of the buying center is important, what information buying center gives you is that it helps the salespeople and the the selling team or the supplier to understand who are the most powerful members of the buying center. See, this is very important for you to understand that in an organization, the power is not equally distributed. So, some members may be more powerful than the rest. Now, if you want to have a sales or you want to make a sales with this for this university or organization, then you have to understand who is the most powerful person in the buying center, right, who can actually influence the process. So, this is a practical learning which you have to do, and I think this will help you to understand this situation much better, right. So, with this I will try to I like to wind up my class. So, I think you have understood what we have discussed today, and I will meet you in the next 11th lecture. So, till then keep yourself safe and have a nice time. Thank you very much.